She couldn't find a good job after graduation and her sick mother needed help, yet she still showed kindness to a billionaire stranger who didn't even have transport fare because he lost his wallet and his business card. But what she didn't know was that this simple act of kindness would open the door to a job that would change her life forever. Who really was this stranger and why did he come into her life? Sit back and find out as we dive into this powerful and surprising story. In a city where glass towers kiss the clouds and imported cars hum along polished roads, few ever look down. Below the skyline of Lagos, in a cramped, rusted neighborhood tucked behind a noisy highway, Maya woke up every day to a life that felt like a punishment for dreaming. Her bed was a thin mat on the floor beside her mother's creaky iron frame hospital cot. The room smelled of disinfectant, mixed with the faint aroma of burnt akara from the neighbor's stall. But it wasn't the smell that made Maya wince each morning, it was the sound of her mother's cough, deep and raspy, reminding her time was running out. Despite having a university degree in accounting, Maya scrubbed office toilets and picked gum off the bottoms of desks to pay for her mother's medication and porridge. Every morning at 5 a.m., she wore her cleaner's uniform, a navy blue blouse and yellow trousers, and tied her natural afro into a bun. Then she kissed her mother's forehead and whispered, "I'll find a better job soon, Mama. Just hold on." But the job never came. What came instead were the pitying glances of others, the sting of being called just a cleaner, and the cruel irony of mopping floors in the very buildings that housed companies she once dreamed of working for. Maya's journey to the office tower was both physical and emotional. As she boarded a crowded Danfo bus, she clutched her last 500 naira note, already calculating the change she'd need for lunch and her mother's evening medicine. She sat by the window, not to admire the view, but to inhale fresher air, if only slightly, than the damp scent of sweat and exhaust inside. As the bus weaved through the chaotic Lagos traffic, Maya's eyes wandered to the billboards, "Invest in the future of tech." Luxury apartments now selling in Banana Island. She felt like a ghost moving through a city that refused to see her. Yet she smiled at a mother struggling with her child's school bag, gave up her seat to an old woman, and helped the bus conductor count change when he got confused. Kindness had no price, and she had no riches, only heart. She arrived at the high-rise tech building by 7 a.m., always before anyone else, and pushed open the back door with a rag in her hand. The irony stunned, this was the same building that once rejected her job application. Now she was here, not with a laptop, but with a mop. Across the city, Arthur Okizi, founder of Nigeria's fastest-growing tech company, adjusted his Rolex and sipped Ethiopian coffee from a sleek mug that cost more than Maya's monthly salary. In his penthouse apartment, surrounded by glass and marble, he scrolled through emails on his phone without really reading them. Everything about Arthur was polished, his suits, his speech, and his detachment from the real world. His parents had passed when he was young, leaving him wealth from old oil money. Tech gave him more riches, but not warmth. His assistant spoke to him only through schedules. His meals were cooked by chefs he never greeted. His friends were more interested in investments than connection. Though kind on the surface, Arthur lived in a bubble that echoed with emptiness. If you asked him about Lagos traffic, he'd shrug, it didn't affect him. If you asked him about the poor, he'd nod vaguely and say he donates. But feelings? They were muted by success. That morning, Arthur didn't know that fate was planning a reset. His day was going to collide with someone who had nothing but humanity, and it would be the spark that burned his indifference to the ground. Later that day, as fate would have it, Arthur decided to take a rare solo stroll outside to clear his head before a major investors' meeting. Dressed in a crisp white shirt and designer slacks, he was unaware his wallet had slipped from his pocket as he checked his phone near the bus station. No driver, no assistant, just him and the city he barely knew. He reached for his wallet to pay for a quick ride and realized it was gone. Panic. Not because of the money, he could replace that. But his ID, credit cards, and business card that held access to everything were gone. Stranded among people he often ignored, Arthur stood helpless for the first time in years. And that's when Maya saw him. She didn't recognize him, nor did she care about his fancy watch. She saw a man looking lost, out of place, and vulnerable. Without hesitation, she walked up and asked, "Are you all right?" When he explained his situation, she simply said, "I have enough for two." With that, she paid for both their bus fares, giving her lunch money away without blinking. It was a simple act. But for Arthur, it shattered the world he thought he understood. Arthur sat silently at the back of the Danfo bus, his posture tense, hands folded neatly over his knees like someone completely out of place. Maya had insisted on paying for both their fares without hesitation, and now she sat beside him, staring out the window, seemingly unaware of the storm she had just stirred inside him. The hum of traffic, the chatter of passengers, and the conductor's shouts faded into background noise as Arthur replayed the moment in his mind over and over. Why would someone who has so little give so freely? He glanced at her, sweat glistened on her forehead, her uniform looked faded from years of use, and the lines of exhaustion marked her young face. Yet there was peace in her eyes, a kind of quiet strength he had never encountered in boardrooms or billionaires' clubs. He, a man of means, would have walked past someone like her without a second thought. But now, in this crammed bus, he realized he had been blind to people who truly mattered. He tried to speak, maybe thank her again, but words felt insufficient. She had given her last money to a stranger without asking for anything in return. And she did it as though it were the most natural thing in the world. When they reached her stop, she smiled gently, said take care, and stepped off. Just like that, she disappeared into the chaos of Lagos traffic, leaving Arthur sitting with guilt, admiration, and a burning curiosity. Maya's day continued like all others, predictable in its struggles, silent in its suffering. She returned to the office complex before the staff arrived, immediately picking up her mop and bucket like a soldier reporting for duty. The building's lobby gleamed, but only because Maya had scrubbed it before the sun rose. Her hands were calloused, her knees aching, but she never complained. After wiping down the conference room tables, she headed to the restrooms, humming quietly to herself. She didn't think twice about the man from the bus after all. Kindness wasn't supposed to be remembered, it was supposed to be given. Around 9 a.m., while dusting the glass staircase, her supervisor, a sharp-tongued woman named Madame Eben, scolded her for missing a spot on the chrome railing. Maya apologized with her usual grace, bowed slightly, and went back to cleaning. Her world remained unchanged. The world didn't reward girls like her, it barely noticed them. As she washed her hands in the maintenance sink, she sighed and glanced at the pocket where her last money once sat. Gone. But it didn't matter, someone needed it more than she did. That was enough. Back in his executive suite, Arthur's mind wasn't on the investor meeting. It wasn't on the quarterly reports or product launches. It was on her. The girl with the kind heart. The cleaner who didn't hesitate. He sat by the window, ignoring the skyline view, replaying their encounter. Find her, he finally said aloud, startling his assistant, Kemi. Sir, she asked, confused. He hesitated, unsure how to explain. I met someone. A cleaner. She helped me this morning. I want to know who she is. Kemi blinked in surprise, this wasn't like Arthur. He handed her the description, female, navy blue uniform with yellow trim, short afro, mid-20s, possibly working for the cleaning agency in their building. Kemi raised an eyebrow but didn't question him. Arthur then checked the security footage. There she was walking through the back service door just before 7 a.m. His chest tightened. She works in this building? He couldn't believe he had crossed paths with such a soul in his own tower and never noticed. That night, while the world slept, Arthur stared at the screen freeze-framed on Maya's face and whispered, "How many more people like her have I walked past?" The next morning, Arthur arrived at the office earlier than usual. He told no one. He sat in the quiet lobby behind a tinted glass divider near the elevators, watching as the building slowly woke. He wasn't dressed in a suit this time. A plain shirt. Sneakers. No assistant. He waited until she came. And she did it, same uniform, same quiet pace, same bowed head of humility. She walked past him without noticing, just as he had walked past her in previous days. There was something humbling in being invisible for once. He followed at a distance, silently watching her polish the same staircase she was scolded on the day before. She hummed while she worked. She smiled at a guard. She tied her gloves tighter as she cleaned the restroom sinks. Arthur's heart clenched. He didn't want to throw money at her out of guilt. He wanted to understand her. He wanted to earn her trust. For the first time in his life, he was interested in a person not for what they had, but for what they gave. And Maya had given him something rare: perspective. He returned to his suite, picked up his pen, and began to write something he never thought he'd write again: a handwritten thank you note. The sun had barely kissed the windows of the office building when Maya arrived as usual, dragging her mop bucket with quiet determination. Her body ached, her mind was weary, but her spirit still moved gently like morning wind. She reached the janitor's closet, pulled open the cart drawer, and froze. Lying on top of her gloves and folded cleaning rags was an envelope neatly sealed, with her name handwritten in elegant cursive. Maya. She looked around, confused. No one else was around yet. With hesitant fingers, she opened it. Inside was a small white card, with a message penned in blue ink: "You changed my day with your kindness. I see you. Thank you. A." Her heart fluttered, but her mind raced. Who was A? Was this a prank? A cruel joke from someone in the office playing with her emotions? Her hands trembled. Nobody ever thanked cleaners. Nobody noticed them. They only called when the trash bins were full or the toilet stank. She tucked the note into her pocket and stared at the walls for a moment, unsure whether to smile or be afraid. In a world that always looked past her, being seen suddenly felt risky. Later that afternoon, as Maya mopped the glass corridor near the boardroom, she heard footsteps approaching. Polished, steady. She looked up, and there he was. Arthur O'Keefe. She froze mid-swipe. He wasn't surrounded by staff or dressed in his usual business armor. Today, he wore a simple black shirt and slacks, and his expression was soft, almost apologetic. Maya, he asked. Her heart leapt. How did he know her name? Her fingers tightened around the mop handle. Yes, sir, she answered, uncertain whether to keep working or run. Arthur smiled, the kind of smile that didn't belong to CEOs. I wanted to thank you. For what you did at the bus stop. Maya blinked. Her mouth moved, but no words came out. He continued, you helped me when I had nothing to offer. That meant something. She looked down, feeling awkward. It wasn't a big deal, sir. I'd been stranded before too. Arthur tilted his head. Still, most people walk away. You didn't. She nodded slowly, unsure where this conversation was going. Then he added gently, I see you. That phrase again. The words lingered in her ears long after he left the corridor. And for the first time, Maya began to believe maybe, just maybe, someone truly did. Whispers began to circulate before noon. In the lunchroom, in the elevators, among the desk clusters, everyone had something to say. Did you see the boss talking to the cleaner? He called her by name. Maybe she's his side thing. The words hit like stones, and Maya felt each one. In the hallway, she noticed glances that lingered too long, smirks that curled with poison. One woman in particular, Chioma, Arthur's executive assistant, glared with burning suspicion. Chioma had worked with Arthur for years and made no secret of her admiration for him. She'd always imagined herself rising through the company, perhaps even into his life. Now, this cleaner had come from nowhere and received attention she never got. Maya kept her head down, tried to clean faster, tried to be invisible again, but it was too late. Being seen came with a cost. Even the security guard who once smiled at her now looked away. That afternoon, as she wiped down the reception desk, Chioma brushed past her and hissed, better know your place, cleaner. Maya blinked back tears. She had done nothing wrong. But the shame crept in like smoke from a fire she never started. At the end of the day, Maya returned to the janitor's closet, exhausted and near tears. But sitting on her cleaning cart was another envelope, this time larger, thicker. She hesitated before picking it up. Inside was an elegant, navy blue card embossed with silver letters, O'Keefe Tech Future Creators Initiative. A smaller note inside read, you deserve more than thanks. This is not a gift, it's a challenge. Join the program. Learn. Grow. Let's see how far your mind can go. Arthur. Maya's breath caught. She had heard of the initiative. It was a tech mentorship program for brilliant young people from underprivileged backgrounds. It had launched just last year and accepted only a handful from thousands of applicants. Her fingers trembled as she read it again. This couldn't be real. She didn't feel worthy. What if she failed? What if they laughed at her? Still, something stirred deep inside. A spark. A whisper that said, maybe this is your moment. She clutched the invitation to her chest. In a world that often locked doors, someone had just cracked one open. And for the first time in years, Maya didn't feel like a cleaner, she felt like a seed finally being given soil to grow. The gates of the Okizi Tech Future Creators Initiative swung open to a sea of fresh ambition. Maya stood at the entrance of the state-of-the-art training hub, clutching her invitation like a lifeline. Her cleaner's uniform had been replaced with a modest second-hand blouse and slacks borrowed from a neighbor. Her hair was neatly tucked beneath a head wrap, and she wore flat shoes that squeaked with every step. Around her, sharply dressed young people carried MacBooks, laughed confidently, and walked like they belonged. Maya didn't. As she stepped inside, glass walls reflected her uncertainty back at her. The training center pulsed with innovation, touchscreen whiteboards, digital name tags, coding stations, and fast-talking instructors. The first orientation lecture had already begun, and Maya slipped into the last row unnoticed. Or so she thought. Whispers started. A girl in red heels sneered, "Is that the janitor from Okizi Towers?" Maya stared straight ahead, heart pounding. But she kept her head high. The instructor explained the basics of UI/UX design. Maya took out her cheap notebook, jotting notes furiously, translating tech jargon into ideas she could grasp. Though the walls were glass, she felt like she was walking through fire, but still she walked. Break time offered no comfort. Maya stood near the water cooler, alone, sipping slowly and overhearing the murmurs. A tall boy named Tachukwu, the son of a wealthy businesswoman, pointed at her and joked, "Maybe she's here to clean the screens." The group around him laughed, and Maya's cheeks flushed. Her grip on the paper cup tightened. Just then, an instructor called for participants to form groups for a UI/UX prototype exercise. Maya was assigned to a team led by Chioma's cousin, who frowned when she approached. "Let's just keep it simple," the cousin said. During the session, Maya made a suggestion adding a visual feature for users with poor eyesight, but she was dismissed. "We're not building for cleaners," someone muttered. Her hands shook. When she accidentally clicked the wrong file and caused a crash in the group interface, the laughter returned. She wanted to run. She wanted to cry. She thought of her mother, lying on that creaky hospital bed, praying for her daily. And she remembered Arthur's words, "You're not invisible." That night, Maya almost didn't return home. She sat at the bus stop, eyes wet, staring at the traffic. But somewhere between her pain and purpose, she chose to keep going. Break time offered no comfort. Maya stood near the water cooler, alone, sipping slowly and overhearing the murmurs. A tall boy named Tachukwu, the son of a wealthy businesswoman, pointed at her and joked, "Maybe she's here to clean the screens." The group around him laughed, and Maya's cheeks flushed. Her grip on the paper cup tightened. Just then, the next day brought a challenge, a 12-hour solo coding test, open to all participants. The winner would earn a direct mentorship slot with the company's lead engineer. Maya sat at her station, no fancy device, just a borrowed laptop with cracked keys. As others tapped away confidently, Maya recalled nights she spent watching YouTube coding tutorials on borrowed Wi-Fi, writing basic HTML on paper when she had no access to a computer. She took a breath and began building something she understood, a simple, clean health tracking app for caregivers. Her code wasn't flashy, but it was empathetic. It spoke to the forgotten, the people like her mother who needed help. While others built complicated designs with clunky visuals, Maya's interface was warm, intuitive, and beautiful in its clarity. Hours passed. Everyone submitted. The next morning, the results were in. Maya's name was at the top. Silence filled the room as participants stared at the screen. Maya blinked twice, unsure if it was a mistake. The lead engineer announced, "This is innovation that understands people." Applause followed. It wasn't thunderous, but it was real. Chioma's cousin looked stunned. Even Tachukwo clapped reluctantly. Maya didn't smile wide, she simply exhaled. Later that evening, Maya was packing her things when a voice called from the back of the room. "Maya." She turned slowly. Arthur stood there, dressed simply again, holding a warm cup of tea. He didn't speak right away. He just watched her, like a man seeing a star that had finally decided to shine. "I heard what you built," he said. "You didn't just pass a test. You solved a real problem with heart. That's rare." Maya felt her knees weaken. She clutched her bag tightly. "I didn't think I'd win," she whispered. Arthur stepped forward, smiled. "You're not just kind. You're brilliant." Maya's eyes filled with tears. It wasn't the applause that moved her. It was those words, spoken by someone who had once lived behind glass and gold, now standing beside her in truth. He handed her a black envelope. "This is your invitation to the next level," he said. Inside was an offer letter for a junior design role at Okizi Tech, starting the following month. Maya gasped. "I'm just a cleaner." Arthur shook his head. "You were. But not anymore." For the first time, Maya allowed herself to believe she deserved it. The hospital ward was still. Dim light filtered through cracked windows, casting a soft glow on Mama's frail form. Maya sat beside her, holding a bowl of hot pepper soup with trembling hands. "Mama," she whispered, brushing strands of gray hair from her mother's forehead, "I got the job." Her mother blinked, slow and weak, but her lips curved into the gentlest smile. "You mean, you're not cleaning anymore?" Maya laughed through tears. "No, Mama. I'm going to design things. Real things. For real people." She placed the offer letter gently on her mother's lap. The elderly woman, once a schoolteacher before illness struck, touched the paper like it was sacred. "You've always been brilliant," she murmured. "The world just took too long to notice." That moment became a photograph in Maya's heart, a frame of peace and pride. For years, she had carried shame, scarcity, and silent prayers. Now, she carried purpose. The girl who had once been invisible in crowded buses now had a desk, a title, and soon, a future. As she fed her mother and wiped the corners of her lips, Maya realized that kindness had not just opened a door, it had healed a home. Her first day at Okizi Tech as a junior UX designer didn't go unnoticed. She stepped into the building not through the back door this time, but through the front, her ID badge glinting in the sun, her hair styled in soft coils, her outfit professional yet proud. As she entered the elevator, she passed Chioma and a few others from the gossiping cluster. They looked at her as though they'd seen a ghost. Maya smiled gently. "Good morning," she said with grace. The elevator dinged. As she walked into her new office, Arthur was already there, seated casually at her welcome desk with a bouquet of sunflowers. "This desk needed someone with heart," he said. The team gathered for a short induction. The HR director said, "Today, we welcome a new designer. You already know her as the woman whose heart changed our boss." Laughter and claps erupted. Maya tried to hide her tears. From the mop to the mouse, she had walked a road of thorns and glass and now stood on tile floors she once scrubbed, not with rags, but with respect. The story caught fire faster than Maya could imagine. From cleaner to designer, the woman who inspired a billionaire, the headline trended on social media, and people began recognizing her in traffic, in queues, in markets. Strangers stopped her just to say thank you. One afternoon, while sitting at a quiet cafe, Maya received a call from her old cleaning supervisor, Madame Eben. "I saw you on TV," she said quietly. "I'm sorry for how I treated you." Maya's heart softened. "We all learn in our own time," she replied. At Okizi Tech, staff who once ignored her now sought her input on projects. Even Chioma offered a quiet handshake, humbled not just by Maya's brilliance but her grace. But none of it changed Maya. She still took the Danfo some mornings. Still carried her mother's lunch in a food flask. Still greeted the cleaning staff by name. Arthur watched all of it silently, with admiration growing deeper each day. It wasn't her success that mesmerized him. It was how success never corrupted her soul. She remained Maya the kind. And kindness, he realized, was the rarest form of intelligence. Weeks passed, and Maya flourished. She built an app that gained attention from investors, one focused on healthcare accessibility for low-income families. Arthur arranged a company dinner to celebrate the team. Under golden chandeliers and a setting sun on the balcony of the company's rooftop garden, Arthur raised a toast. "To the woman who reminded me that wealth means nothing without warmth," he said. Then, before the staff, before her stunned eyes, he dropped to one knee. Gasps filled the air. Maya's hand flew to her mouth. "You taught me how to feel, Maya. How to see. You didn't just fix my ride, you fixed my heart." In his hand was a gold band, simple but elegant, etched with her mother's favorite phrase, "Shine quietly." Maya's tears flowed. "I was never looking for love," she whispered. "But I was always hoping to be seen." She nodded. "Yes." Applause erupted. Laughter, tears, music. As they embraced, Maya looked up at the stars above Lagos and realized, her kindness didn't just return, it came back with interest. In love. In purpose. In legacy. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay motivated.